Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move us forward to our next speaker. Michael McCafferty has an MA in linguistics and is on the faculty of the Department of Second Language Studies and the Intensive English program at Indiana University. He is an Algonquin linguist specializing in the Miami, Illinois language, where he works primarily, but not exclusively, in the analysis of names, place names, tribe names, etc. In 1999, he discovered a long-lost French Miami, Illinois dictionary in the Jesuit archives in Quebec, and by handwriting analysis identified the author of that dictionary and the author of the equally massive Illinois French dictionary previously attributed to Jacques Gravier. Since that time, he has been working for the Miami tribe of Oklahoma as the French to English translator of the 3 extant Miami, Illinois dictionaries composed by the French Jesuits in the late 1600s and early 1700s in the Illinois country. He is the author of Native American Place Names of Indiana. He is currently working on 2 books, one about Marie Roussinault and the other on early French fur trader itineraries in the early 1700s. Please welcome Michael McCafferty as he presents the meaning and analysis of the tribal name Cahokia.
Many names in the Illinois-Miami language relevant to the study of the Illinois country have enjoyed careful linguistic and historical analysis. For example, Chicago, Chicago, Wild Leak River, Kankakee, Teyahkiki, it is a land open to the view. You have that. Kaskaskia, Katydid, Kaskaskia, Wabashi, Wabashiki, it shines white. That's the Wabash River. And there's even an old Miami, Illinois name for St. Genevieve. Mitikusha Aminutaini, literally Frenchman, his town. The name Cahokia was originally that of one of the bands of the Illinois tribe, all of whom spoke an Algonquin language known today as Miami, Illinois, or Illinois, Miami. This hyphenated name refers to the 2 major dialect groups of the language. However, speakers of the Miami dialect and speakers of the Illinois dialect always understood each other perfectly, no differently from how speakers of English from Montana and speakers of English from Missouri can understand each other. In other words, the Illinois and Miami spoke the same language. The closest relative of Miami is Ojibwe. These languages are related in much the same way as Spanish and Italian are related. In other words, the grammars and vocabularies of Miami and Ojibwe, like those of Spanish and Italian, demonstrate their close relationship. However, Miami and Ojibwe, like Spanish and Italian, are not mutually intelligible languages. In other words, people speaking Ojibwe would not be understood by Illinois Miami speakers or vice versa. Now, the name Cahokia has been used for more than 100 years by Americans in a way that is very different from its original application. For many today, the name Cahokia evokes an image of the great Illinois State Historic Site and World Heritage Site known as Cahokia Mounds, located across the Mississippi from St. Louis. This once bustling pre-Columbian metropolis, founded around 900 AD and abandoned around 1350 AD, is home to the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas, the largest pyramid north of Mexico, known as Monk's Mound. That's this one. However, the people who built this great city were not the Illinois tribe called Cahokia, who along with other Illinois arrived in the upper Illinois River Valley only in the early 1600s. The earliest attested form of the ethnonym Cahokia is Cahokia, recorded by the French explorer René Robert Cavelier de la Salle. This is one of the names that he wrote down when he entered the Illinois River Valley for the first time in January of 1680. 20 years later, the Jesuit missionary Jacques Gravier spelled the same name, Cahokia. In the meantime, Jacques Largillier, who was an important Jesuit brother working in the Illinois country in the late 1600s and early 1700s, who had accompanied Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet on the epic Mississippi voyage of 1673, recorded an older and in fact the prehistoric name of this name, Cahokia. Largillier's first figure 8 represents the sound short O or long O, and the second figure 8 represents the sound W. The antiquity of Largillier's Cahokia is evident in its Iwa ending, which represents either phonemic Iwa or Iwa. Importantly, this recording also reveals that the name was originally a verb, meaning he, she is Cahokia. At the time that Largillier recorded Cahokia, in fact, during most of the time that the Jesuits had their mission among the Illinois, a second sound change was raking through the Illinois-Miami language, shifting the Indian endings of some nouns that come from verbs, such as ireniwa, literally, he is a regular being, the word for man, mikichiwa, eagle, peresiwa, raven, mimiwa, passenger pigeon, sakiwa, sock, amawewa, bee, and kinosewewa, mountain lion, from iwa, iwa, and ewa to ia. In other words, by the late 1700s, when this sound change had run its course, these same nouns had shifted to irenia, ikichia, peresia, mimia, sakya, amawea, and kinusawia, as we see in the slide. Yeah, this sound change was significant. Okay, next one. I mention this fact because this sound change can be seen in the older form of this name, Cahokia, when compared to the newer form, Cahokia and Cahokia. Now, in writing Cahokia, Gravier did an important thing. He indicated that there was a syllable break between the vowel A and the vowel sound that he spelled OU. Like all French writers, Gravier used the diaeresis, those two dots over the O, to show that the A was pronounced distinctly from the OU. We see the diaeresis used in French in the same way in maïs, corn, naïf, naive, Noël, Christmas, Raphael, and Zaire, to mention a few. Gravier used the diaeresis in his recording for the same reason, to show that in this name there was a syllable break between the A and the OU. The French Jesuit missionary Jean de Boulanger, after his arrival just across the Mississippi from here in 1719, also wrote the short colloquial French form of Cahokia, which he spelled K-O. Here, Le Boulanger's letter 8 represents Illinois-Miami sound O or O, while the final X, which I have marked in red, I hope, yes, is simply the silent French orthographic plural marker that we see in nouns such as chateau, couteau, nouveau, and etc. Le Boulanger also wrote the full and plural Illinois form in his dictionary, Cahokiaki, the Cahokia, and the locative noun Cahokingi, at the Cahokia. In his own dictionary, the Jesuit missionary Pierre Pinet has the full form in the locative noun Cahokingi, toward the Cahokia. Now LaSalle, as well as the Jesuit yeoman Jacques Largillier, and the two Jesuit priests Pinet and Le Boulanger, we think his name was pronounced Pinet rather than Pinet, who among with Largillier created the three surviving dictionaries of the Illinois-Miami language, never wrote the name Cahokia with an H. Okay. However, it is important to point out that the vowel sequence AO, which the Jesuits wrote A with a figure 8, okay, is not permitted in the Illinois-Miami language. Illinois-Miami, for the most part, does not tolerate vowel plus vowel clusters, and Algonquin languages in general like to contract vowel plus vowel clusters. Thus, sequences such as A or O simply don't occur. At the same time that AO is non-existent in Illinois-Miami, that vowel sequence is extremely rare in the French language. Kao, laos, aute, to ripen in August, auta, chigger, an Haussien, a term that describes a person who takes a vacation in August, comprised a small handful of examples in French. That's as far as I know. So, now Gravier knew that the sequence of the letters AO would have surprised his French readers because of its exotic nature. That's why he put the diaeresis in his Cahokia. Adding a diaeresis over the A made the pronunciation of the name clearer. He wanted to be sure that they understood that the A and the O belonged in different syllables. The problem with these early spellings of the name Cahokia is that they lack an H. The reason for this is that H is not a sound in French, and these early Jesuits, along with La Salle, either didn't hear the H in Cahokia or they didn't pay it much mind. And once the A figure 8 sequence was written down enough times by the Jesuits, their spellings such as Cahokia, Cahokiaki, Cahokingi, Cahokingishi became frozen. However, there was indeed an H in Cahokia, and the H was noticed and recorded by many Frenchmen who were not Jesuit missionaries. For example, the H is found in a letter that Jean-Baptiste de Santos de Chaillon, a commandant at Detroit, wrote on August 22nd, 1730. He wrote Cahokia, which is an important form of the name that we will return to shortly. French-speaking scribes of legal documents in the Illinois country also heard the H and spelled Cahokia with an H, even into the late 1780s. In 1779, for example, we find the full and modern form of the name with an H in Cahokia. Moreover, French-speaking scribes in the Illinois country also wrote the short form of the name with an H. As examples, the Cahokia records has Caho and Caho from 1778. Note again that these short forms of the name, as well as the full form Cahokia, have the silent French plural marker S. Now, to understand the meaning of the name, one must begin an understanding of the concept of syllable reduplication. Yeah. Syllable reduplication is a feature of many languages around the world, including in North America, various languages in the Euro-Aztecan family, the Muskegon family, and the Cilician family. Syllable reduplication is the repetition of a syllable in a verb to indicate intensity, multiple events, continuity, repetition, etc. The repetition of the first syllable of a verb, known as first syllable reduplication, is extremely common in Illinois, Miami. First syllable reduplication is not a feature of French or English. However, in Miami, Illinois, first syllable reduplication is very productive. In fact, first syllable reduplication can occur with almost any verb that describes an action that can be repeated or extended over time. Here are just a few documented examples in phonemic transcription. Memenkime, meaning to cry as a fawn or a deer. Mamantakiwan, mamantakwinam, curl it or twist it. Nanamin, shake him or shake her. Wewesewi, fan oneself. Wewepihsa, to swing. And wewepinam, to rock it. In all these cases, the first syllable of the verb is repeated and attached to the beginning of the word. While none of these examples is attested in the Jesuit dictionaries without first syllable reduplication, this situation is simply an accident of the records. This fact is demonstrated when, in his dictionary, Pinette has Nipekwa megu, I have shoes too tight that they hurt my feet, without first syllable reduplication, while Largillier in his own dictionary has the very same verb with syllable reduplication, Nipekwa megu. As noted earlier, the name Cahokia was originally a verb ending in either iwa or iwa. And it is the same verb with first syllable reduplication that Le Boulanger attests in his dictionary with Cahokia, which he translated, he searches, he goes out looking, he goes out to uncover. Largillier's dictionary has the same verb in the first person singular form, nikakauki, to which he gives the translation, I am looking for the trail. Although there is no explicit word here for trail in that verb, it appears that Largillier's recording and others related to it indicate that the verb means to look for a trail. A recording relevant to this analysis of Cahokia was made by Pierre Doliette, a well-known figure in the Illinois country, who came here as a teenager, spent decades with the Illinois, and learned to speak the Illinois-Miami language fluently. Doliette wrote the name of one of the Miami subtribes as Cahokia, with first syllable reduplication, Cahokia. Two things are important about Doliette's recording. It supports the above analysis of Cahokia, as it shows that deverbal tribe names, those names that came from verbs, with syllable reduplication could occur alongside those that did not have first syllable reduplication. And secondly, Doliette's Cahokia, like Gravier's Kaukiwa, is a verb reanalyzed as a noun, just as we see in the Illinois-Miami nouns for Kaskaskiwa, Katie did, meaning he or she goes kaskas, and Peyankishiwa, he or she has torn ears, a name written in English as Piankasha. These names are typical agentive nouns that come from animate intransitive verb themes. As a side note, Doliette's final S here is the French plural marker. Unfortunately, in the end, a firm phonemic spelling for Cahokia is not possible for two reasons. First, there appear to be no cognates in other Algonquian languages, which, however, is not in the least unusual. The unique set of vocabulary in the Illinois-Miami language was the greatest obstacle for French Jesuits learning that language, all of whom were initially versed in Ojibwe. But a cognate in another language could tell us something about the vowel lengths of the first A and the O of Cahokia. Vowel length is a very important, meaningful feature in Algonquian languages. For example, Miami, Illinois, Nipi means water, but Nipi with a long first vowel means my arrow. Second, in the name Cahokia, while possible, it isn't certain if the K represents the sound K or HK. Pre-aspirated consonants, here represented by the digraph HK, are another important and meaningful feature of the language. The term ahi means field, but aki marks animate nouns for plural, as in akwekonsaki, chipmunks. The upshot is that there are 8 candidates for how the name Cahokia was pronounced in Miami, Illinois. There you go. However, I'm not going to go through them. However, the spelling Cahokia, let's go on to that one, by Saint-Ours de Chaillon, mentioned above, which he wrote with SK, could narrow down the possibilities to 4, since SK was a common mishearing of pre-aspirated HK. So there are probably 4 possibilities, reduced from 8. And finally, if the original verb ended in iwa instead of iwa, the vowel of the first syllable would have been necessarily long. So the possibilities could now be reduced to 2, Cahokia or Cahokia. I would place my bet on the one with, on one of these forms. Let's see which one. On one of these 2 forms. Since first syllable reduplication is often has a long vowel, so this would be Cahokia or Cahokia. So I think one of these 2 are actually the pronunciation of the name. However, lacking cognates in other Algonquin languages, we can't say whether the original verb ended in iwa or iwa. So, to summarize, the name Cahokia was originally the name of a subtribe of the Illinois who spoke the Illinois language. In the 18th century, Cahokia was borrowed by Americans for the name of the great Mississippian mound city that is located across the river from St. Louis. Number 2, the Jesuit missionaries in the Illinois country wrote an H in their, didn't didn't write an H in their spelling of Cahokia, either because they didn't hear it or because it's not a sound in French. However, among themselves, the spelling of the name became frozen without an H. At the same time, number 3, non-Jesuit recorders heard the H and wrote it in their spellings of the name. The name comes from a verb that means he, she searches, or he, she goes out looking, quite possibly for a trail. As a noun, maybe, I guess you could say, the searcher, or the searcher for a trail. The major problem in reconstructing the phonemic spelling of the name boils down to not knowing the vowel links of the first A and the O, and not knowing if the K sound was K or pre-aspirated HK. Thank you. Merci. Néo. This is not something I typically do. I'm usually at my house quietly in a cavern. So this is very different.
So we have time for questions?
Yeah, sure. Any questions?
Were you able to speak to Native American speaking these languages?
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I speak a couple of.
Can you repeat the question?
Can you go back to the mic?
He's got the mic on.
Go to the mic.
He's got it on.
Oh, you got the mic.
I think you might want to repeat the question.
Oh, the question was, do I speak these languages?
Were you able to talk to Native Americans?
Oh, well, the Illinois-Miami language is extinct. However, it's being brought back to life by the Miami tribe. The center, Miami Center in Oxford, Ohio, at the University of Miami of Ohio, they're doing great wonders with the language. So there are people who now speak it. Yeah. Yeah.
Michael, last time you presented something to us, the language study was going on very well, but the Peoria in Oklahoma were not partaking in the education.
Oh, right.
Now they are. Can you speak to that, how that has developed their language, how they embraced it, and if there was politics involved in it, if you know?
I know for a long time they resisted it because it was a Miami thing, but I don't know the history of. I'm not involved with that side of things. So, but I think now the Peoria have.
They are. Yeah. They
Cool.
offer
It's
classes.
very good. It's very good. Yeah. 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 D'autres
Behind you,
questions?
Michael. No, all the way behind.
Is it possible that the searching idea in the name indicated a breakdown of settled communities post-contact, and then the transient nature or the nomadic nature of other tribes coming into previously settled areas that were no longer completely settled because of societal destruction?
Did you hear the question? Wow. I don't know. We know that the name is prehistoric. We know that.
Pre-contact.
Pre-contact. And so it goes all the way back to when the Illinois were in the western Lake Erie basin. So it's a hard question to answer, I think.
You had settled tribes, even in pre-contact,
Oh.
settled tribes and nomadic tribes, and I was wondering if this is an encounter between a nomadic tribe and a settled tribe.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Yeah. There's a great map. It's called Nouvelle France. It dates to the 1640s, right before the Iroquois pretty much lowered the beam on the Algonquians in the Detroit area, in southern Michigan, in the western Lake Erie Basin. It's a wonderful map. You can find it on the web. And it shows the location of all these tribes, where they were located. But what's interesting about it, it doesn't show the Miami or the Illinois. They had already left. They were gone. And they probably saw the writing on the wall. And they had already moved into the Illinois Valley. And in so doing, they moved into Ho-Chunk territory and displaced the Ho-Chunk, who in a pretty significant war. And then the Ho-Chunk fled north after that, far north. Yeah, what else? Anything else?
Is there still an Illini Indian tribe in the country?
Well, the Peoria represent the Illinois, and they fuse because of the reductions of the population, you know. Let me point out one thing, too, which is important. Illini was invented, that word was invented in the 1930s at the University of Illinois for the basketball and football teams. And let's see. Michael Nessany is publishing a paper I wrote about that. I think it's going to come out in the winter edition of the Le Journal. So yeah, it's nobody used it historically.
The Peoria Indians of Oklahoma are the descendants of the consolidated tribes, and they're in Miami, Oklahoma. And you can find their webpage on the web also.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
Are there any references known of what the Illinois people or the Miami people called what is now known as Cahokia?
No. Nope. They weren't related to it. They were, and what we know, what have been told by archaeologists in the know, is that the people who built Cahokia, not everyone who lived there, but the founders of Cahokia were Siouan speakers. Not the Sioux that we see in the movies, the horse riders of Lakota, but they were Siouan speakers. And the Illinois and the Miami arrived quite 200 years after that thing had totally dissolved. It was abandoned. And but I don't think we have no record of that.
Those Siouan speakers, by the way, now are called the Osage and their many cousins. The Osage, the Arkansas, the Omaha, no, not the Omaha. Anyway, there's a bunch of them. And it took a long time for that to come to life, which is mostly agreed on now as far as I know.
Do they have a name to which they refer what is now known as Cahokia?
What's interesting, I don't know if they'd have a name for it, but what's interesting is that when they come there, when they visit Cahokia, they're the only ones who understand it. The Algonquins don't understand the significance of the way it's arranged, laid out, but the Siouans do, which is really interesting. I mean, it kind of shows their connection to the whole place.
The Osage Nation just finished getting back Sugarloaf Mound in southern St. Louis, and they still hold very tightly to that sacred ground tonight.
I probably should, I don't know. The Miami name for the Ohio River means essentially Osage River. And yeah, I'll stop there. I don't want to. I don't want to. You know. Yeah, it's another can of worms, actually.
Okay, let me give Michael a hand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's always interesting, as we've had conferences in the past, we speak a lot about the French, but we also have to recognize some of the other people that preceded the French and African Americans, and they're all part of our culture here, and so we really appreciate that, Michael's work. We talk a lot about, well, appreciate hearing that the Miamis are trying to resurrect their language. We have people trying to resurrect, teach Pawpaw French. I just gave a talk recently about the Bodish people that were here. We only have about 3 or 4 people that still can speak Bodish, which was the language of the 1830s to the 1910, 1920 for the Germans that were here. So we're going to take a short break, 15 minutes. Bathrooms in the back. There's water around, coffee, and we'll reconvene in 15 minutes.